Hello everybody, it's DuckFaden07 again, and today we are playing some new cards in the new Modern Brews. Let's see what's going on in here. We have Errant and Giada and Chromehole Sea Shark, two new cards. Also there is Meeting of Minds. But let's start from the Errant and Giada. This is card from the March of the Machine that says that is a 2/3 flyer and has flash, and says you may look at the top card of your library anytime and you may cast spells with flash or flying from the top of your library. Since most cards in our deck have flash or flying, we can cast them using the Errant and Giada from the top of our library, which is obviously very strong ability. So I'm using this card to gain a card advantage engine, which can help me win the game and win the long game, and not just trying to put pressure with these flyers in the early game. So let's see the rest of the deck. We have some 1-drops, we have some 2-drops, and our 1-drops are creatures that can be sacked to counter instant sorcery spell, and it can definitely buy us time against cascade decks, against other removal, trying to kill our more important creatures, and also we have ways to pump these creatures, especially Mausoleum Wanderer, which then makes harder for opponent to pay the mana for to pay the tax cost. So on the 2 spot we have Skycat Sovereign and Squadron Hawk. Squadron Hawk is very usable in this deck. It is a flyer that when it enters the battlefield finds the rest of the Squadron Hawks from your deck, and then you can pitch those Squadron Hawks to cast Force of Virtues or Shining Shoals or Solitudes from the sideboard, but mostly use it to the Force of Virtue pitch cast. And when you pitch cast a Force of Virtue, all your creatures get +1/+1, which can then make your small flyers very good threats, and it also works well with Mausoleum Wanderer, enabling them to counter instant and sorcery to make X2. So it pumps his power, so his ability becomes better. Also, on the 3 spot, we have a new card, also new card here, Chrome Host Seed Shark. So this card works very well with this high-costed unknown creature spells that can be played for low mana. Like Force of Virtue is a card which can be played for 0 mana, and you will always play it for 0 mana, and it triggers the Seed Shark token to make a 4/4 Incubator token, which is very good. Also, Meeting of the Minds does the same. It is another card that does the card advantage in this deck, not just Errant and Giada. It can also draw you some cards, but it's also very good with Sea Shark. It makes a 4/4 token with the Sea Shark in play. Usually you can do this for 0 mana, which is very powerful. And Spectral Procession is our main token maker in this deck. It creates 3 spirit tokens which work well with the Wanderer. It can pump the Wanderer to be really big. Each of these spirits trigger the Wanderer separately, so when you play the Spectral Procession, Wanderer attacks for 4 damage this turn, which is obviously great. Okay, so also Spectral Procession works well with Meeting of the Minds, getting you 3 tokens. When you play this, you just need to tap 1 blue mana and play the Meeting on the same turn. Or if you have a blue creature already into play, like Familiar, Wanderer, Sovereign, Giada, you can just immediately cast the Meeting of the Minds for 0 mana, which is very good. Similar to the Meeting of the Minds, we have Sephara in this deck, which is, if you don't know, 7 mana angel that can really be played for 1 mana, but you need to tap 4 untapped creatures you control with flying, rather than play this spell's mana cost. And when it enters the battlefield, it says Flying Lifelink and gives all your other creatures with flying indestructible. And since this is a flying tribal deck, all your creatures get indestructible, which is pretty good and plays well around mass removals. Okay, so this is 1 mana 7/7 flying lifelink, which gives indestructible to all of the creatures. So this is a very high potential card, but we need to find a good shell for it, and that's what I was trying to do with this new build using the new cards, which really boost this archetype a bit. Okay, so also similar to Force of Virtue, similar to the Meeting of the Mights, we have Shining Shoal. Shining Shoal is a card that also can be played for 0 mana, and you exile a white card from your hand, uh, and X becomes the mana value of the exile card. So obviously, Sephara costing 7 mana works very well with the Shining Shoal. This is like very good synergy here. I'm pretty excited for this one. So you can easily play 4 Sephara in deck with Shining Shoal, because Shining Shoal and Force of Virtue can really be effectively used to pitch the extra copies, and it's really important to have high mana value spells in this deck, because you often will play against Fury, you will often play against Unholy Heat, and being able to redirect like 6 damage to opponent's face rather than kill all your creature, or Fury's ability is just very powerful, I think. And it also works so well with Seed Shark. You can make with, if you exile Sephara or Emeria Skull, which is just another land, which works well with the Shining Shoal. You can create a 7/7 incubator token, which can then immediately attack next turn after you flip it for 2 mana. So I think the Spectral Procession, if you didn't notice, also is a non-creature spell costing 6 mana. So when you cast this for 3 mana with the Sea Shark on the field, you also make a 6/6 incubator token, which is definitely very powerful. So I feel like this deck has some really high synergy and the potential to actually be playable. Okay, on the sideboard, we have some really interesting options. I wanted to explore these options that fit into the flying tribe really well. Like Spellsetter Sprite is a very really good hit against Cascade decks, and it is also a flyer, and it works well with our other cards, and it can be played with Giada too. And here we have the Subtlety, which is another flash flyer, which also works well uh, in our team and protects us from the Planeswalkers, from the Furies, the Solitudes, or whatever. Okay, so we have also Solitude here. I think Solitude is on the sideboard a very good option here, because Solitude 2 can be played with Errant and Giada using the Flash, because it has Flash, so you can play both cards with Flying or Flash from the top of your library. And you can imagine that playing a Solitude from the top of your library can be extremely good. We have Remorseful Cleric, very popular spirit card, played a lot in the modern, previously in the spirit decks. In all the sideboards spirits used, you will always see Remorseful Cleric, and it is very good too. It is another flyer that has synergy with the rest of the deck, and it's very good. It can be sacrificed to exile target player graveyard. It does the job very well. Another flyer hit card, it's Archon of Meria. This prevents cascade decks. It prevents the small mana value decks from double spelling each turn, which can work very well. And we have Qatar Commando here. It also has Flash, so it has some synergy with Errant and Giada. And it can be sacrificed to destroy artifact enchantment. So I first wanted to test all these cards on the sideboard that go well with Errant and Giada, but I will, for competitive play, I will definitely need to add some more heat, like Dumping Sphere, maybe some counter spells. But this is it for now. So for this, I've just brewed this morning, and I decided for the first try to play this in a less competitive area. So I played 5 games with it in the play lobby, which is not as competitive as MTGO League, but can be a pretty good guide to see just what need to be changed, and the people still play their very competitive decks. So we will see the games I play there, and hopefully find the weaknesses of the list and find what else needs to be put in the sideboard, in the main board. I've done pretty well in those games doing the 4-1. So we'll go from the beginning. Okay. So this was game one against a creativity opponent. Okay, so here is my usual plan, just going for the Squadron Hawk On turn 2, finding all of the Squadron Hawks, then pitching one of them to the Force of Virtue, pumping my team, then casting Spectral Procession. On turn 3, putting 6 power on the field, all flyers, and it can definitely, just doing this can definitely win some games. So I find 2 Squadron Hawks here to put, because I have 7 cards in hand like this. My opponent plays Arid Mesa, but unfortunately should have played this Force of Virtue immediately, but they ended up having the Spell Pierce, so it didn't work well for me. So I could have played it on upkeep and just guarantee resolving it, but this way I was able to resolve my Spectral Procession, so I wasn't really that sorry about it, and was able to start attacking with the Squadron Hawks. My opponent on 3 mana just played the Teferi, bounced one of the tokens, and I drew the Sephara from the top of our deck, unfortunately not being able to find a fourth land. Fourth land would be very, very good here. I will be able um, to cast another Spectral Procession or the Giada, whatever, but still I was able to put a Sephara on the field, and I cast the Mausoleum Wanderer, and I play my Squadron Hawk in hope to play the Meeting of the Minds for free here, but my opponent counters this Hawk, and I wasn't able to play the Meeting of the Minds, but I had the Wanderer on the field, which has Indestructible, which means my opponent can resolve the Creativity for 1, but they probably didn't know what the Wanderer is doing. So they went for the Creativity X2, so I was able to counter it with Wanderer, and my opponent immediately concedes the entire match. So you can immediately see that this environment is a bit less competitive. So we will go now to the next match. Okay, so but still, if even if they resolved one of the Archons, I would still be able to kill them next turn, which was pretty good. So, or they would jump with Sephara with Archon, which would also be put me in a winning position. Okay, I was able to. This was a match too, and I was able to. I had 2 lands here. Emeria's Call in hand is also a land. This one. So I was able again to play the Squadron Hawk on turn 1. Found just another one because I had a lot of cards in hand. But this seemed to be Jund Living End. I don't know if you heard about that deck, but it was really popular long ago. And I went for the Wanderer here, and my opponent decides to go for the Living End in response. Before MH2, this was like the most popular Living End version, before the Shardless Agent came to the format. And now I force them to play their Living End and try to survive. My plan was to resolve the Sephara next turn, so I had to let the damage happen. But still, it wasn't a very good position for me. I did have some options, definitely, but I didn't know that my opponent is playing Soul Spike in a deck, so they finished the job immediately. And we can now go to the game 2. Okay, I had a decent hand here. Judge Familiar on turn 1 is very good against Living End, which means this card can prevent them from doing anything before turn 4, which obviously gives me more time to find a better hit. So definitely the usual play in this position is play the Squadron Hawk, find all the Hawks from the deck, and then pitch cast the Force of Virtue on opponent's turn to make your team big and put really good pressure. If you can follow it with a turn 3 Spectral Procession, it can be just a really good clock, which I suspect can win a lot of games in a modern. So I went for it. Force of Virtue on their turn. I also find another Judge Familiar, which is very good against opponent's deck. So they had the twin shot sniper here to kill my Judge Familiar and go for the living end next turn. But I was able to put the subtlety into the graveyard, which subtlety traded with their biggest creature if they want to attack, so I was still in a good position, especially if I can resolve this spectral procession. And this game now became a race, so I just played my Hawk to block the Ceratodon and attack with subtlety. Their sniper has reach, so I didn't have lethal for the next turn, so I just decided to jump the big creature and continue attacking with subtlety. They jump with the twin shot, of course. So I play the Wanderer and the Hawk to have the lethal next turn, plus the jumper for the big guy. I still had the procession in hand if they go for a second living end. So again, I go for the jump and try to go for the lethal. Okay, so I go for the attacks. My opponent has another outburst, and I have Wanderer, which means they have to pay 2 mana. So they survive the turn. They kill my subtlety, but they also kill their creatures, and I get back a lot more than they do. So this was definitely a losing position for my opponent. Since they already played 2 living ends, I decided to also play my Spectral Possession and just to guarantee the win next turn. And you can see like this Skycat Sovereign in this situation was actually 2 mana 9/9 flying creature with ability to make more flyers, which is like pretty crazy. And I suspect in a lot of situations um, it can be like 4/4 5/5, which is pretty good for a 2 mana creature in modern. Okay, so uh, let's check out the last game. Last game against Living End. Again, having this Wanderer on a turn 1 in this matchup feel pretty important. So of course, start with the Wanderer. And Wanderer in this matchup buys me more time to find other heat. So I attack also my Wanderers get the boost from each spirit token, which it works just crazy with the Spectral Procession. So I just play my Spectral Procession, and both of my Wanderers get +3/+3, and I was able to attack for 8 damage on turn 3, which is pretty crazy. So I put my opponent on 10 life and threaten to end the game next turn with another Spectral. So I play another Wanderer here, and my opponent is also stuck on lands. They go for the Soul Spike on one of the Wanderers. I sacrifice it in response for them not to gain life, and play second Procession, trigger Wanderer 3 times, and put my opponent on 2 life, and they concede. So that was the final match against Lingant. So we can go on to the next game. I will see the wins first. Okay, so let's see this one. Okay, so pretty decent hand, familiar, followed by Squadron Hawk, finding more Squadron Hawks. Opponent starts with a Yoraga Tree Speaker. They were actually playing pretty cool through the Breach deck. I started with the Judge Familiars here. They level up the Yoraga. Go for the attack this turn, so nothing special going on. I play my Squadron Hawk, find 2 of my other Hawks, just attack for 1 damage here and pass the turn. Opponent goes for the Fable to play around my Judge Familiar. So Judge Familiar was actually pretty decent here, slowing my opponent down for the turn. I didn't know what they were doing at the moment, but they had Through the Breach. in their hand that they weren't able to cast last turn. So they went for it now. They put Atraxa into the field and just draw 5 cards with Atraxa. Dramatic Entrance. So they played both Through the Breach and Dramatic Entrance in their deck, trying to and a lot of ramp spells like Painted Prism, Yoraga, and their Atraxa was sacrificed in the turn because of the Through the Breach ability. Next turn, I was able to resolve my Sephara, which is like really cool. 1 mana 7/7 flying lifelink creature that also gives all our team indestructible. This means that I also now have, basically at this moment, I have 1 mana 7/7 flying lifelink, and I have 2 mana 5/5 indestructible creature on the field, which is pretty good. So I go for the Squadron Hawk. I go for the both Squadron Hawks just to pump my Skycat Sovereign. I played land tapped and hold Shining Shoal plus Emeria Skull in the hand. I go to attack with everything, so I was hoping for them to block the 1 mana creature. This way I would be able to redirect the damage from the Atraxa to their face, kill them immediately, but they decided to bring the Sephora, so I just redirect damage to Atraxa. So I killed the Atraxa that way. And I had a lot of damage here. But my opponent also had a lot of cards in hand, and they found the Fury, so they were able to get rid of the Sephara, just playing Fury, copying the Fury, making and also attacking on the same turn. I decided not to block this turn, but just to try to be aggressive and attack my opponent because I had a lot of damage here, and I found Shining Shoal on top, which will hopefully give them the final 3 damage. Unfortunately, my opponent survived on 4 here. So, but my plan was to use the Skycat Sovereign to block, to make a token which can block a Fury that makes me survive on 1 life, and then try to finish them off next turn with a Shoal. Okay, so I attack for 1 here. Could have played the Judge Familiar. I decided not to do it because I was on 1 life anyway and died to any attack that goes through. So I played the Shining Shoal here on the Fury, and my opponent resolves the first strike and immediately dies. They could have like copied their own Fury to kill their own Fury to prevent this from happening. Yeah, but they just they died, so that was it. Okay, so let's see the next game. Had to mulligan this one, keeping it 2-lander, pretty decent one. Have the Sea Shark with the Spectre Procession, Solitude to kill their early ramping creatures, and also a Squadron Hawk to find multiple copies to be able to pitch on the Solitude, and other cards if I find them. So they go for the Painted Prism, trying to ramp into the breach probably, or the entrance. Just go for my usual play, find all the Squadron Hawks. So if they use the Dramatic Entrance, I still can. I still have a Solitude for the token. They just go for another Prism. I just continue attacking. Play this Chrome Host Sea Shark. I have the Force of Virtue, which means I can make a 4/4 Incubator token. On my turn, I can probably make another 6/6, and I have a Solitude to get rid of this Fury. And the Squadron Hawk just was very good in this game, and giving me 3 white cards in hand to be able to both pitch card the Force of Virtue and the Solitude. Unfortunately, I had the Otawara here, which is one of the few non-white sources in this deck, preventing me from casting the Spectral Procession. So I just flipped the Incubator token, attack for 8 damage this turn, and my opponent concedes. That was the match. Okay, so let's That were all the wins, and we will now see the only loss I had playing this 5 games. Opponents definitely made some mistakes, but still I think this is a fine first look at the deck and to see, try to assess its power level. I didn't want to take this immediately to the league, which means I wouldn't be able to play some of the cards on the sideboard I really wanted to test, and I really didn't want to risk coming with such unprepared deck directly to the MTGO league, and especially because I didn't really expect for the flying tribal to immediately be very good without at least without some tweaks. I don't expect this deck to be on a huge power level, and I've accidentally skipped pressed f6 in this situation. I could have my opponent. I think I could have just Wanderer the Drami's Call, which would put me in a much better position here, preventing my opponent from finding the solitude, which was definitely the crucial thing in this game. So that was maybe what the reason why I lost this match. Otherwise, I would have a good chance of winning this. Also cast the Meeting of the Minds here and just wasn't able to find a land, which was pretty unlucky. And I used the Shining Shoal here to kill their Solitude. Didn't want to let them gain so much life. They also had the Knight in this situation, killing my Force of Virtue and Eternal Witness to bring back whatever they want from the graveyard. So just still, I was struggling with the lands, couldn't find it, and so I just wasn't able to play Giada or or anything. I really wanted to double spell here, and my opponent now finds the Soul Herder, but I again had the Shining Shoal to play it as a trick on the knight and kill the Soul Herder, which was very important. So now I play my 2 mana 5/5 flyer, which is obviously pretty good, putting my opponent on a 9 life. So I have basically a lethal on the field if my opponent doesn't do anything, but with just 2 cards in hand, they find the Solitude as a solution for my big flyer, and I still was so struggling with the land. If Errant Giada hit the field, I would have so much better chances of winning this one. So again, there goes Endurance. Opponent is on 0 cards now, and I'm attacking uh, for 3 damage here, 4 damage possibly next turn. So I decide to use the Shining Shoal immediately just to kill the Endurance. And because it was their only blocker, but unfortunately they also had a very good attacker with the lifelink, and their draws were like Ice Fang into Soul Herder, into finding another removal. So I just concede in this situation. So it was one misplay that prevented me from winning this game too, but it was really close, really close, and it shows that you can fight in this grindy matchups too. And in game two, I was just struggling to find the third land, and this was obviously going to be a bad game for me because I kept very weekend, just some hawks and subtlety, so nothing special going on here. I decided to still keep it because didn't play. It wasn't really competitive match, so I just wanted to test how this feels. I find my Squadron Hawks, which is still okay here. I also had the Giada top deck, but what was really a problem for me in this match, and it's really good, I found it out that this Lavinia basically won opponent the match. I wasn't able to cast a Meeting of the Minds for 0, I wasn't able to pitch cast the Subtlety, and all of that stuff was really a problem. And I decided just to hold the Subtlety here, which ended up not being a great choice because opponent didn't play anything. So I went for the Meeting of the Minds end of turn and draw 2 cards here. My opponent goes for the Kotal in response. Then I decide to dig cards from the top, try to find a solution for this Lavinia. And so that was the reason I decided not to hold the subtlety for the next turn, which ended up being a pretty bad choice. And I did find a Sephara from the top, which was pretty good. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to cast. I had two Force of Virtues in my hand, which I was able to pitch cast, and a Subtlety, which would be amazing, considering they went for the Solitude on their next turn, and Ephemerate, which then blew up my Giada and the Sephara and the Soul Herder, blinking the Solitude, and because of all this, I had to concede the match, and that was it. But it was really close, and I saw some of the things I need to deal with before taking this to the competitive league, and you will see in my next league. Next video I make of this deck, how will I try to evolve this sideboard and the main board. Also definitely have to use more hate cards for the competitive gameplay, like probably Thumping Sphere to hate on the Tron and Amulet matchups, and probably have to get rid of some of the cute cards from the sideboard and get better graveyard hate and stuff like that. But I think it wasn't necessary for the lobby play. Okay, so I think this has some real potential. I really like the Sea Shark plus Force of Virtue thing. Also, Meeting of the Minds work well with the Spectre Procession and the low curve creatures. So I think this is very highly synergistic deck, and there are a lot of synergies here, and a lot of ways to get early advantage on the board, which can be unsolvable for some of the decks in Modern. Really a cool thing about Sephara is missing the heat. It is a 7/7 creature, so it dodges the heat, which can be really important. And it also has a lifelink, which makes racing with the Murktide very good, and with basically any creature deck. So that can kill a 7/7 flyer. Basically, they can't raise the 7/7 lifelink. It's impossible, especially when you also have the Shining Shoal and so much blockers that the Squadron Hawk enable. And here we have Sea Shark and Errant of Giada enabling the late game too. So I think there is a potential. There is also similar creature to Skyscat Sovereign, a bit weaker, but still there are some options. Obviously there is Subtlety, there is Solitude. These cards can be main decked, so I still have to consider some options, but I'm really satisfied so far how this is playing out. And this I think this can be a cool deck to have some fun with on your FNMs, but I'll have to test it more in competitive metagame, and to see how it performs there, and hopefully if it does decently, I'll make another video using this one. Okay, this is not my only Errant and the Giada brew. I spent a lot of time, almost like 4 days, trying to find. This was a flying tribal. So this was flying tribal, but Errant and Giada also says that you can cast spells with flash from top of your library. So my second brew with this card was try to make the flash tribal, which is also pretty cool, and you can expect that video in the next few days too. And it was I really enjoyed playing that, but really wanted to make it more competitive. And these are all the brews from the last few days, a lot of the brews using the battles. And I made a lot of these Flash Tribal versions. And there is one version using the Icefang Kotal. This was it. And there is other version using the Grief. I played a lot of different versions. Here is the one using the Grief. I still modified it a bit. I add more lands and cut some rebirths. I added two more evils in the deck. I cut two rebirths. Rebirth wasn't very good to the mana base. So played 22 lands in the end, made a much better mana base, and I really, really liked this deck. I really enjoyed playing it, and you will see my final list in a few days on my channel. But I think this is another very exciting Giada list, and this Giada is basically enabled for two very cool archetypes. I'm still not sure if they can exist at the moment, but they are something to look at for the future. And if the new cards come out that can support this, it can maybe become a lot stronger, a lot better. Okay, so there are a lot of cool cards having the flash, and you have now basically 8 cards that get you really hard advantage when you play those spells like Slither Wisp, and now also Giada, and there are subtleties, solitudes, leyline bindings, dress downs, spell setter sprites. All of these cards have flash and work well with these two guys. Also, the Icewind Coatl and many other creatures that didn't get into the 60, like Spell Queller, like that. Dimir guy that destroys the creature, Venser. Uh, so a lot of other options too. Niambi was one of the options I tried as another like way to play the Solitude and get it back to your hand. And that is it. Okay, so I hope you liked the Flying Tribal. Hope you like the gameplay. I'll be working on it, trying to improve it, make it more competitive. But I'm really satisfied with the starting list and how it performed. And I think it is ready to, with some tweaks, I'll take it to the competitive league and hopefully make another video of that list. Updated one, of course. Okay, so that is it for today. Hope you liked the video, hope you liked the gameplay. If you want to help the channel, click like, click subscribe, comment on the video, and what cards would you like to see in the Flying Tribal? Maybe something I forgot. I considered the 2 mana counter spells, but it's just a bit better mana league. But definitely I'll have to put some counters on the sideboard, like maybe probably Flusterstorms to hit on the Cascade decks. And are there any other cards? I was like often just siding the Shining Shoals, and when I side out the Shining Shoals, the Chrome Hole Sea Shards become much worse. So I kind of was thinking about having some non-creature card on the sideboard, which has this kind of effect, like that can be cast for free, which is good for Sea Shark that I can replace when putting Shoal out of the deck, that I don't have to also take the sea sharks out. I didn't think of anything good so far, but I'm thinking about it, trying to find the solutions. So, okay, as I said, that is it for today, and until the next video. Goodbye.